if you want to go to the next slide. So why are we all here? Central Florida Battle of the Building. This is a competition that both SoFIA and along with the USGBC Central Florida chapter, along with our sponsors, will be hosting starting July 1st, which is this coming Saturday. This battle is a voluntary fun competition to help the commercial building owners and managers across the Central Florida area to reduce energy, water consumption, and also waste. For the Central Florida area that we're looking at, it is a 5-county region. So it's any commercial building owner or manager in Volusia, Orange, Seminole, Polk, or Lake counties. One of the great things about this is not only the support that building owners and managers will get throughout the 6 months of the challenge, which will run from July 1st to December 31st, but there's also going to be recognition for the largest reducers when it comes to energy and waste for their buildings in 16 different categories. And as you can see on this slide, these are the categories that we'll be tracking. So we've got commercial, warehouse, public assembly, hotel, retail, restaurants, medical, mixed use, and multifamily. So the winners of this competition will be based on the greatest percentage reduction compared from their baseline of July 2016, July 2017 through December of 2017. And one note, and we will be updating this on the website, although the competition ends December 31st, reporting will be open through January 31st for participants to be able to enter their utility data into Portfolio Manager. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Castro, and he's going to give a little bit of information of some of the programs that we have set up as part of the Battle of the Buildings. Chris?
Thank you, Michelle. Great introduction, and thank you for everybody for being on the line today. We are very excited to be launching the Battle of the Buildings and partnering officially with the US EPA Energy Star program to really bring a regional friendly competition to commercial and multifamily real estate here in Central Florida. One of the unique identifiers to our challenge compared to many across the country is a partnership with the University of Central Florida to train the next generation of energy specialists and energy practitioners. We are launching what's called the Energy Specialist Training Program. And the whole effort here is 20 students at the University of Central Florida are getting training by industry professionals over the course of the month of June. So they've been going through weekly in-person trainings on how to use Energy Star Portfolio Manager, how to assist building owners in data collection and data entry into the system, also identifying energy savings and water savings opportunities for buildings, and essentially being deployed to you all who are participating in the Battle of the Buildings free of charge. And so on the website cfbotb.org, you'll be able to go on there and reserve an energy specialist, and those individuals will be able to schedule times to come out and meet with you or your building managers, walk through the Energy Star Portfolio Manager tool, and again, provide that technical assistance throughout the 6-month challenge. The cool thing is this provides obviously real world experience for students who are interested in getting into the energy field. And we're lucky to see that there's a wide variety of students, not just your traditional engineering or environmental science students. There are students who are studying marketing and communications, studying legal studies, and others. And so this is very much an interdisciplinary effort. Moving forward, I wanted to really get into this challenge and give you all some of the background as well as information about the tool that we'll be using to track the energy, water, and waste consumption in your buildings for those who are participating. So the question is why focus on buildings and plants? And truthfully, total U.S. energy across the country, about 40% comes from commercial and residential buildings. That includes multifamily as well. So substantial amount of energy use is obviously within the real estate industry and sector. And a vast majority of that, there's a study that was done by the American Council for Energy Efficient Economies, ACEEE, and they found that over a 10-year period, the vast majority of the energy that we're consuming, this is total energy, is being wasted in the United States. It's 86% of the energy that we're consuming is going to waste. And that's inefficiencies in how we produce power, inefficiencies in how we transmit and distribute power in our cities, and of course, inefficiencies down at the end user. And what we've seen is that on average, buildings can see about 30% of the energy they're consuming going to waste in inefficiencies. So there's this opportunity that on average across the board, we can make improvements, both low and no cost improvements, as well as improvements that are more capital intensive. And when I mention low and no cost, the potential to reduce 10% is really in things that are just tweaking, that are first and foremost measuring and monitoring our energy use, to benchmark ourselves and ensure that we're tracking this performance. And then secondly, it's tweaking and finding these low and no cost opportunities that we'll get into on how to save energy and really improve the performance of your building, increase the net operating income of those who own those facilities, lower the utility bills for those who occupy those facilities, and of course, at the end of the day, improve public health and the environment through those efforts in aggregate. So this is a big reason of why we wanted to focus on Battle of the Buildings in real estate, primarily the commercial and multifamily sector. So I want to get into the tool. This is the tool that we'll be using is called Energy Star Portfolio Manager. And you'll see throughout this presentation how widely adopted Energy Star is and the value of what it provides. But this is a free online tool that's provided to anyone who owns or manages real estate, and the tool does a number of wonders, over 130 data points that are being tracked from financial metrics, environmental metrics, overall building characteristics, and more. And so there's a huge value in benchmarking our buildings on a daily basis. As they often say, you can't manage what we're not measuring. And Energy Star, over the several decades that have been using this tool, have found that just by benchmarking, just by putting the information into the Energy Star tool, they showed a 7% savings over 3 years, or about a 2.5% per year savings, just in essentially benchmarking and monitoring and tracking energy, water, and waste within our buildings. The act of consistently benchmarking buildings has resulted in savings and improving energy performance. The other thing that it does is benchmarking allows you to do a couple of different things. One is it compares your building to a national sample of similar buildings. Often people ask whether or not benchmarking my building in Florida is going to be compared to a building in Seattle, as an example. And what has happened is Energy Star has provided weather normalized data. So they actually bring in climate information, so as well as heating degree days and cooling degree days, and they're able to understand how our buildings in Orlando compare to Seattle on an apples to apples comparison, really better understanding that. So you can compare your building to a national sample. You can also compare your building to other similar types of facilities in your geographic region. And so a 100,000 square foot office building can be compared to other similar 100,000 square foot office buildings, not just by size and space type, but also by the year built. And so taking into account building codes and a lot of the back end data that's needed to make an apples to apples comparison. And then I'd say lastly, this is called Portfolio Manager for a reason, and that is because many real estate companies own a portfolio of buildings. And this allows you as a portfolio manager to better understand and identify the underperformers in your portfolio and set priorities for using limited staff time or investment capital that may be available. So obviously you don't want to invest in a building that has high performance, because the amount of savings or the improvement in that score will be less than if you invest in a lower performing building, right? It's diminishing returns over time as you get closer and closer to a higher score, and we'll get into what that score looks like. it's harder and harder to improve your score. It means your building is getting more and more efficient. And of course, that'll take more capital to really move the needle. So this helps identify those underperformers. So why benchmark your energy, water, and waste? And I think we've been mentioning a number of them, but it's important to understand the individual's building performance, your individual performance, and how you're tracking over time. It's important to compare yourself to a national median and help better understand how your building is relating to others. And in addition, tracking that impact of energy, water, and waste. I mentioned that there's over 130 different data points that this tool will provide to you and assist in providing metrics so that you can pull reports, you can pull graphics from this tool, and help you as a portfolio manager better understand how your building is performing. So a little background on Energy Star. This effort launched in 1999 and really helping, it was a partnership between the US EPA and the US Department of Energy, and they created this tool. And it really was around helping organizations increase efficiency of energy use. And over the years, they have expanded the scope to incorporate water use. And just recently, last year in 2016, expanded it to include waste as well, which is really cool. The overall principle and the foundation of this was good management, and information leads to good management, shall I say. And so energy tracking and management right now is not widely practiced. Even after 2 decades of this thing being around, it's still not widely practiced, and there's no standards. And so what Energy Star tried to do is create a standard and provide a free tool to encourage buildings over and over to benchmark on a monthly basis. 50% of the U.S. commercial building market currently is using Portfolio Manager in one way or another. Some facilities are using other things like Energy Cap or Lucid Building OS or other management and tracking tools. But the cool thing is Energy Star has become such a standard that there's an API, there's actually a connection between these existing tools and Energy Star that still allows them to benchmark buildings very simply through a web service. So check in if you don't currently use Energy Star and are using another tool, look into it and see whether or not that tool has an API connection to Energy Star Portfolio Manager. Here are a couple of other stats. Nearly 500,000 buildings are using this tool on a monthly basis, and about 45 billion square feet of real estate. I mentioned a couple of these already in terms of the number of properties, and what we're starting to see is about 200,000 are actually using it for water as well, and so that's becoming increasingly more and more of an importance as a resource, water resources being a major challenge in our day. And so currently 30,000 buildings have actually gone through the certification process to become an Energy Star building, and we'll get into that a little bit later about how to do that for your facility and whether or not you're eligible. So on the management tool side of things, I mentioned this assesses your whole building energy and water consumption. So this is really looking at a full building. Think of Energy Star almost like a miles per gallon for a vehicle or an energy gauge for a new computer. It's not identical to those comparisons, but they're very similar. They're trying to provide a standardized metric or a score for us to assess how we're comparing ourselves. And in this case, with Energy Star, it's from 1 to 100. The other cool things you can do is you can track green power purchased. So if you're purchasing renewable energy certificates, or if you have solar on your rooftop, this will track the production of solar. It helps create custom reports. So if you have a monthly report that you have to provide to the chief operating officer or the CFO, this helps to share how your financial metrics and environmental metrics are compared to other facilities. And then, of course, you get to apply for Energy Star certification if you become eligible. A lot of the metrics, I mentioned there's 130 metrics that are being tracked through Energy Star free of charge. Things such as energy consumption, so the site and source, as well as weather normalized energy consumption. The water consumption that's provided by the municipality, as well as tracking reclaimed water and repurposed water. Greenhouse gas emissions. This is really helping to look at both indirect and direct, as well as avoided GHG emissions. And then the score. For those that are available, and we'll get into the space types that can get a score, Energy Star provides a 1 to 100 score of how your building's competing. For those buildings that don't get a 1 to 100 score, this tool is still extremely important, and you can still get what's called an energy use intensity score, an EUI score. This is essentially the true benchmark metric that is on the back end converted to a more simple 1 to 100 score. So the 1 to 100 is just one of the 130 metrics out there in Energy Star Portfolio Manager. So if your building can't get the 1 to 100 score, and we'll get into why, that doesn't mean that this tool is obsolete. It means that just one of the 130 metrics are ineligible for your building. So Portfolio Manager has really become the industry standard. As you can see here, a number of major large corporations are using this tool as a day-to-day portfolio manager tracking tool. Everything from from property management companies like CBRE and Jones Lang LaSalle to large corporations like Sears, Target, Staples, Transwestern, Kohl's stores, JCPenney's, and the list goes on and on and on. And now there's over 450,000 buildings, again, being benchmarked in the Energy Star tool. I'm going to skip over this. Basically, I already mentioned some of the metrics calculators that are generated and the key performance indicators you can get from the tool, and the management benefits that come from tracking this information. So who is using Energy Star Portfolio Manager? I think this is an important slide to show that there's a diverse group of people who are actually using this. Building owners, managers, and tenants, and of course service providers are some of the key individuals who are using this tool. But also local, county, and state governments are using this tool as an ongoing benchmarking policy. Some of those having public disclosure policies, like recently the city of Orlando, and some of those just voluntarily tracking them as a standard practice. For those who are trying to get LEED or Green Globe certification for an existing building, many people don't know, but Energy Star is a prerequisite in order to get LEED existing building certification. So if your building isn't a higher performer, 75 or above in that 1 to 100 score, you actually aren't eligible to get LEED certification for those credits. So this is certainly major importance. Consumer information sites like TripAdvisor, CoStar, Apartments.com, these sites are actually using Energy Star. Energy competitions like what we're using, Kilowatt Crackdowns or Battle of the Buildings, that's certainly the use of the tool, and even multifamily financing industry. So we're seeing that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and HUD are starting to use this tool to better understand the performance of their investments and to look at the portfolio of their investments. And there's incentives out there for those who have loans from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to benchmark your building and provide that information to them on an annual basis. There's actually financial kickbacks and rebates that building owners can get. So definitely look into that if you haven't already. We mentioned that state and local governments are leveraging Portfolio Manager. Here's a map of across the country of state benchmarking and programs, as well as local and city benchmarking programs. So this is becoming, again, widely adopted across the field. A little bit more detail on the metrics here. These are the metrics that are available. And I mentioned everything from the energy to your comparison metrics to even financial metrics on the energy cost per square foot, the cumulative investment in facility upgrades. And the cool thing is this tool can also track your improvements. So let's say you do a lighting retrofit over the course of the next 6 months and you want to show the measurement and verification of those savings. This tool will help you measure and verify the savings of any type of investment, whether it's changing set points on your thermostat, whether it's investing in your new HVAC equipment or changing out your lighting. This tool manages and tracks that investment by inputting all of the data. So very important for a measurement and verification perspective. So diving into the user interface, here is kind of a screenshot of a portfolio, what you'll look at when you log into Energy Star Portfolio Manager. And as you can see on the left-hand side, you'll start seeing trends of source and site EUI and greenhouse gas emissions. Those can also be changed to whatever metrics you'd like to see. And then in the center, or on the righter side, you'll see a list of the properties that you have inputted. So if you have 5 or plus buildings in there, you can actually go into each individual building and can ask for actions to request reports and things of that nature. Another cool thing about this tool is it helps you set goals and track progress. So you know, there's an ability for you to say, I want to save 10% over the course of the next year, as an example. And you can set that goal and that metric, and then month after month, as you're inputting this data, it will help you identify how close you are to getting that goal and whether or not you exceeded it. And it'll help you compare, you know, and track that progress. So a lot of cool stuff. And as you can see on that screen there, the metrics and comparison of your property and your target. So you can have a target and then where your property actually lies and see how much further we need to go to get to the goal. Beyond benchmarking, this tool is used for many different applications, and I mentioned that it generates custom reports. So you can actually pull graphics, pie charts, you can put bar charts on how your building has been using energy and water and waste over year or month over month, and provide that custom report, you know, to an individual. And so that's really helpful for those who are managing portfolios to streamline your job and help to provide that information much easier for you. Really just clicks of buttons. So getting into the EPA's 1 to 100 score, here's a little bit more information about that. I mentioned that this is a nationally representative sample of data. It's called CBEX, or the Commercial Building Energy Consumption Survey. And CBEX gathers data about building characteristics and energy use from thousands of buildings and different space types across the United States on an annual basis. And what Energy Star does is takes the CBEX database, which is done by the U.S. Department of Energy, and they put it into the back end as the database that helps to analyze and score these buildings and help us better understand them. In addition to just CBEX, they bring in also statistical modeling and weather normalized information about your building, and helps you get to the point where you can compare the actual energy data for your building to the modeled estimate that's being provided. So Energy Star, like a miles per gallon, is trying to get you that 1 to 100 score, 1 being the worst in class, I guess you can say, 50 being the national median or the national average for your type of building, and 100 being the best in class building out there. There are a select number of property types that can actually get this 1 to 100 score. And if you don't see your property type on here, don't worry, the tool still provides a lot of great metrics, such as energy use intensity data, which is another benchmark score. It's basically the true benchmark score on the back end. And so the score based on CBEX, as you can see here, are things like hotels, commercial office buildings, warehouses, houses of worship, K through 12 schools, financial offices, medical offices, and more. And then in addition, there's other facilities that can get a 1 to 100 score based on survey data, such as hospitals, wastewater treatment plants, and most importantly, this new multifamily housing. All apartments and condos now have the ability to get a 1 to 100 score, and that recently was launched here. So that's an exciting addition. So you're probably asking yourself, well, how do I get Energy Star certified as my building? And essentially, this is only eligible for the superior energy users, the Energy Stars, right, of our facilities out there. And so in order to get eligible, you have to have a building that scored 75 to 100 in basically the top 25 percentile of buildings across the region and across the country who are the same characteristics, the same space type, the same year built, the same size, right, and the same uses. And so this is very much an apples to apples comparison. Once your building is above 75, you can go through a very simple process of verifying the data. And so what they ask is they ask for a professional engineer or a registered architect, either or, PE or an RA, to print out your statement of energy performance, basically your benchmark for that particular building, and go through and verify that the data that you put in is correct. Is the year built correct? Are the energy utility bills correct? Did you put all of the utility bills in there to ensure that you have an accurate score? And what are the characteristics and making sure that they're correct? One other thing that they do is they go around the facility and they'll check the foot candle of the building in terms of the lighting, the foot candle readings, because what they want to make sure is that you're not compromising indoor quality and productivity for the people who live and work in these buildings just for the sake of energy use. It's important to note that you can have a very energy efficient building and not compromise indoor environmental quality, the temperature, or even the lighting. And so they'll go through and they'll check in certain key places of your building. And once you pass that verification, they submit it to Energy Star and you'll get a plaque, an actual plaque, as well as a sticker, a decal that you can put on your building to show that it's an Energy Star facility. So what type of data are we talking about here? Obviously, we need property information. When you sign up to Energy Star, they're going to ask you the building type. They're going to ask you the name, the street address, the zip code, so that it knows the location that you're in. It's going to talk about the property type data, so the gross square footage of your building, as well as use details, which vary from space type to space type. But a lot of them are, what are the operating hours of this building? How many full-time employees does this building have? How many computers does this whole facility have in it? And then, most importantly, the utility bills. And this is really asking for a minimum of 12 months of consumption data for all types of energy consumed on your property. So this is everything from electricity to natural gas, even to on-site renewable energy if you have it. And so it's important that we look at all of the utility bills that are associated with your building, not just electricity. If you're using natural gas in your building, we need to take the gas bills. We need to put those in there as well, because what it's going to do is look at the full consumption, the whole building energy information, and be able to properly score it as well. In addition, you put in your water meter information. Usually this is much easier than utilities because it's a standard master meter. And so you put in water information, and then the same thing goes with waste. You can actually get from your waste haulers data about tonnage for your compactor or your 4 or 8 yard container, and the same thing goes with recycling. And you can add that into this information. There are 4 ways actually to get data into Portfolio Manager. So it's not just a manual data entry, which is certainly one of the ways you can do that. There's also a single meter spreadsheet where Energy Star has an Excel file template that you can download on their website, and you essentially can copy and paste the data. You might already have this in an Excel file, so this might be easier for you just to copy and paste the full 12 months into the spreadsheet that Energy Star has provided, and then you can upload that single spreadsheet into Portfolio Manager and auto-populate your entire utility data information. So that's super, much obviously more simple than manual data entry. There's also a multimeter spreadsheet approach. So if you have multiple meters on your property or multiple types of meters from electricity to gas, etc., even water can be inputted in a single upload. And so you can find all of that information on the Energy Star Portfolio Manager website, and we'll get that to you here shortly. And then lastly is web services. And there are certain utilities, unfortunately, OUC and Duke currently do not have web services, but we are working with them very closely to streamline the data process so that you as building owners and managers can essentially just go onto your My OUC database or My Duke database and pull the whole building data, aggregate all of the meters, pull that data into Energy Star Portfolio Manager with clicks of a button. It becomes extremely simple. And of course, that simplifies the whole process and encourages people to benchmark on a more regular basis. And so I want to let you all know on the call that we're working very closely with OUC and with Duke Energy to find ways to enable aggregated benchmarking information and utility data information so that we can assist you in the benchmarking process. So we got a couple of other slides here. Tapping into Energy Star's technical assistance. A lot of people don't realize, but Energy Star has an entire call center and task force of technical assistance. There's a website that you can go to, as you can see here, energystar.gov/buildingshelp, and that provides frequently asked questions and answers. But also you can attend a live Ask an Expert session on an ongoing basis. Energy Star multiple times a month is having an Ask an Expert call or webinar, and that will allow you to jump on, learn more of the ins and outs of the portfolio manager and some of the unique applications, and then ask an expert one-on-one about something you may be facing in your building. And of course, I forgot to mention that we'll have that free technical assistance from the UCF energy specialists who are getting trained through Energy Star as we speak. And so we'll have somebody that you can reach out to at Energy Star, and we'll have somebody here locally if you need to walk you through that process. Energy Star recognition, and I mentioned as long as you have that 75 or above score, you can go through the process of getting certified. And here are a couple of the decals that you would get imposed. There's the recent 2017 certified building. There's also other recognition that they have on an annual basis where they recognize Partner of the Year. They recognize the industry more for kind of factories and larger industry. They'll recognize some major leaders in that space as well. So this is about getting local as well as national recognition for the work that you're doing to save energy, water, and waste. So the cool thing about Energy Star certified buildings is that this has been proven to actually yield financial and environmental metrics. Energy Star certified buildings are more than 75% efficient than similar buildings. So they're higher performing buildings. They have lower utility bills. They have higher net operating incomes for those who own them, and they're healthier at the end of the day. They also use 35% less energy on average in general compared to your regular building. So they're more efficient and they're using less energy and water. And because of that, there are fewer impacts on the environment. They have fewer greenhouse gas emissions, about 35% less emissions from one building to another that's certified. The new decal, I mentioned this already, there's a new decal that's being highlighted for recertification. So if your building has already been certified, you basically can get a recertification on an annual basis or every 5 years at minimum. And you can see there that this building's been certified for 15 years straight. And so this is an ongoing process, right? This is not just a one-time effort once a month or 6-month effort for this challenge. The hope is that you all see the benefits and start to track and monitor using Energy Star on a regular basis. There are a couple other really great tools that are being provided by Energy Star. There's a guideline for energy management. If you go to energystar.gov/guidelines, they have developed an entire guideline for energy managers on how to really move the needle in a positive direction for energy, water, and waste reduction. Everything from this process that you see here, where you oftentimes start by making a commitment, assessing your performance and setting goals, creating an action plan, implementing that action plan, evaluating, recognizing your achievements, and doing this all in an existing process where you're reassessing on an ongoing basis. They have a fantastic guidebook that I highly encourage you all to download and may be able to provide some tips for the competition. There's also some great graphics and printouts that you can download from the Energy Star website that encourages employees to really get engaged in this process. Obviously, building managers don't have the full say on how these buildings use energy and water. It really comes down to the tenant or the individual household or apartment dweller that's within your building. And so as building managers, you do have an opportunity, though, to engage with those tenants and engage with those building managers or occupants in order to encourage them to do a little bit more to either save energy with LEDs as they switch out their lights, or bump up their AC just a couple of degrees, and that will really show improvements. Turn off lights when you don't need them, and many other low-cost things that people can be doing in aggregate that shows a huge amount of savings. And lastly, I'd say, reiterating that, engage our employees with some fun tools. And so on the EnergyStar.gov/work website, there's some really great guides and printouts, green team checklists that you can have to encourage your staff to really get engaged. There's energy quizzes. There's a whole online building tour video on things that you can do to save energy. There's posters and tip cards and a lot more. So what we've tried to do is, by partnering with Energy Star, not only provide this free tool that's very simple to use and will be useful for you, but also some tools that are being provided by Energy Star to really move the needle on energy, water, and waste savings. So I'll turn it back over to Michelle, and hopefully that was helpful to walk through. Happy to take some questions and open it up. But Michelle, if you want to close us off here, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. That was a great overview of the Energy Star and the Portfolio Manager management tools. And as Chris mentioned throughout the webinar, Portfolio Manager is a free tool for commercial building owners and managers. Also, all of the resources that will be provided to battle participants throughout the challenge, so through July 1st through December 31st, will be offered free of charge. This includes the UCF Energy Specialist Program that Chris mentioned. We are also hosting, hopefully once a month, Portfolio Manager 101, 211 training classes, and of course the webinar series. So, and of course, all of these wonderful tools that we're able to offer to the participants would not be available and possible if it weren't for our wonderful sponsors that you see listed here. So what's next? So if you haven't registered for the battle, there's still time. Registration and all the resources that Chris mentioned, and I mentioned as well, are available online at the battle website. Again, it's www.cfbotv.org. Also, our next webinar will be on July 19th, and the focus will be on energy conservation and specific measures you can implement in your facility to reduce energy consumption. Again, our complete list of the webinar series is also located on the battle website. So at this point, we'll go ahead and open it up to any questions that anybody might have.
Michelle, we have a question through the chat from Esteban, and it said the challenge is for 1 meter per building, correct? Meaning if you have more than 1 meter that is connected to multiple, or if you have 1 meter that's connected to multiple buildings, then would you still be able to submit those buildings?
So Esteban, I can address that. That is a challenge, because the Energy Star tool is really looking at a single facility and the amount of energy use that's being consumed in that building. And if it's being shared with another building, we can't get an accurate score for or data for how much energy or water that building is using. So there are solutions to that. There's something called the submeter, I think you're familiar with, that will allow you to get the proper reading of how much energy is being consumed in one particular building over another. Submeters are in essence relatively inexpensive, and will really help you over time better track the utilities in that particular building. But yes, unfortunately, if you have a meter that's being shared with 2 or 3 other buildings, you can't necessarily benchmark all 3 of those together. This is for standalone facilities.
Thanks, Chris. And I see our next question from Cam. So is it confidential to participate, business name, and actual performance? So it is confidential. When you actually register your building, you're asked, do you want to share your information, with a checkbox for yes or no. If you click no, your information will not be shared except with the obvious participants of Sophia, who is the planning committee that will be looking at the information provided through Portfolio Manager to determine the winners. and how the reduction is calculated, which is the next part of your question. And you have a good point that, there are spikeages in particular months, but that's the great use of using Portfolio Manager, is that you are able to, the score is based on that time frame. So if you have a particular spike that you're able to reduce, it does help even it out.
Yep, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, but the only data or the only information that's going to be published is if you are the winner of one of the categories anyways, right?
Yes, well that's, if you are, and yes and no, when you register for the Portfolio Manager, or I'm sorry, for the battle, you register your building, there is that option, share your data, yes or no. If you click yes, what we're going to post online after the battle begins, that's probably next week, is just everybody participating that clicked that yes. If you click no, your name will not be on there. The only way that we would share any of your information is if you were one of the category winners. And obviously we would be reaching out to the winners to inform them of that for the award ceremony that we're planning on having in March, and get their approval to share what their energy score was.
And Susan has a question. Is it true that the Energy Star minimum rating will increase next year?
The Energy Star minimum rating.
Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't heard anything about that. Have you?
No, I haven't. I'm not sure what they mean by Energy Star minimum rating. Does that mean like to get certified from 75 to 100? Not 100% sure on what they mean by that, but I haven't heard of anything regarding kind of changing the scores, changing the rating.
Yeah, Susan emailed back or text back raising the minimum. Again, that's not something that Chris or I have heard, but we do have contacts with Department of Energy and also with EPA, so that's something that we can reach out and find out if there's any plans on changing that. Okay. And then Mark, please provide the links to the bootcamp activity kit. Everything that you'll be able to find, including links that Chris provided in the webinar here, will be located on the www.csdotb.org. We are wanting that to be one website that you can go to for all points of the challenge. So we'll have the informational links, we'll have fact sheets for each of the months. Again, next month, July, starting the challenge is going to focus on energy consumption. Then we'll move into water, saving techniques, and waste, and thereon and so forth. And let's see, Esteban texted, the last date that you can submit a building for the challenge, we would like to have all of the buildings entered in, obviously, by July 1st if possible. We do understand that for some groups, they're entering multiple buildings, so that might be difficult. So we are going to allow registration through probably mid-July. You don't have to have all of your utility bills available when signing up. You just need to make sure that by that January 31st deadline to enter your data, everything is in there. Not only the information from the July to December for the challenge, but also your history for the year prior.
Yeah, just to add to that, one thing that the Sophia group decided was that we were going to kind of extend or allow people to register their buildings by the end of July as well. So obviously we're encouraging to get you in before July and this week, basically by the end of Friday, putting in your buildings. But for whatever reason, we had a couple of nonprofits, as an example, that wanted to put their buildings in but needed their board to get approval, and they were meeting in early July. And so we felt that as long as you are okay with the baseline being starting from July 1st through the end of the year, that there's no problem with, registering later into the month of July, but we really want to try to get all the buildings that are trying to participate by the end of July. So if you need a little bit more time, it's not that you won't be able to participate. So I want to really encourage that. Still try to get as many buildings into the system as possible. And I want to mention that we have some pretty amazing buildings that are already registered. The City of Orlando has put in over 40 different buildings into the system that we've claimed. We have the Orange County Convention Center has joined, the mall at Millenia, a huge facility. Obviously, they've joined. We have the SunTrust Tower in downtown, the Bank of America building, One Orlando Center building. There are some really heavy hitters within our community who have stepped up to the plate and will be adding and have added their buildings to the list. So the Amway Center, the Amway Arena, City Hall is going to be a part of it. And we really encourage any facility, large and small. I mean, as long as your facility is above the thresholds that we provided there. I think restaurants can be as low as, less than 1,500 square feet or more. I mean, that's the lowest, but any size commercial or multifamily building, no matter what it is, we want to encourage you to participate.
And Chris, that's a good point. Yes, we do have some great facilities that have signed up, but we also have quite a few smaller facilities that are also participating. And we're happy to say that at this point, we have buildings in almost every category. So there's going to be some great competition for each of the sector categories and each of the size categories. And that's one of the reasons why we focused on having that size breakout for each of the categories so that we could capture, obviously, those larger facilities, but not exclude some of the smaller ones. And it's fun. Will progress reports be announced throughout the challenge to see how well everyone is doing or receive motivation to do better? That's an excellent question. So for all of those participants that checked yes, that we can share their data, what we will be doing is providing probably midway through the challenge an update of who's participating, where everybody is. And as far as the motivation, that's one of the reasons why each of the months throughout the challenge, we're doing focus on one particular area. The webinars, the website, all of the information that we'll be providing to participants will focus on that. You'll be getting emails from the participating, or I would say the planning committee, on different things that you can be doing, different resources that are available either through your energy companies, just different resources out there in the community. And then also we're going to be providing information through social media on both the Sophia Facebook page and on the and blasting out information through the Sophia Twitter account. So if you are not following or haven't liked either one of those, I would encourage everybody to do so.
Awesome.
So are there any more questions at this point?
I just want to say another big thank you to everybody who's on the call and for all the battle sponsors. We wouldn't be able to do this without the participation. So obviously City of Orlando, we've been a part of it, but also the Building Owners and Managers Association, the BOMA chapter in Orlando, Orlando Utilities Commission, USGBC Central Florida and USGBC Florida have been tremendous. Duke Energy came in as silver sponsors, University of Central Florida, the green sponsors, the Apartment Association of Greater Orlando, and a big thanks to Chip again for allowing us to use to help host this webinar and the webinar series in general. TLC Engineering for architecture, Heal Interiors, and 15 Light Years as green sponsors, and then lastly in the bronze sponsors, Search Aircon Technologies, Deadis Distributions, EcoBuilt Strategies, and the City of Winter Park. This has really been a public-private, academic, and community effort, and we're really excited. We hope to really be creating a model for other cities and other regions to start competing in a friendly competition to save energy, water, and reduce waste. So thank you.
Yeah, so that's a good point, Chris. And especially thanks to the City of Winter Park. They're our latest sponsors. They actually came on board this week. So if you're part of an organization that's interested in not only participating but sponsoring the challenge, it's still time to do so. And again, the sponsorship link is available on the Battle website, and the different categories list out the specific benefits that all of our sponsors will be getting. And I do want to mention each of the sponsor categories directly sponsors the UCF Energy Specialist Program, all the way from our platinum sponsor to our participating sponsors. Again, we could not be doing this program in partnership with UCF without everybody's support. So if there aren't any other questions, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. If anybody has any questions that maybe come up after, again, this webinar will be posted online, but we also have an email address through Sophia that if you have questions either as you're signing up throughout the course of the battle, feel free to email the Sophia group. We'll be responding to all of the inquiries that come in. So with that, we'll go ahead and end this. Thank you, everybody, for participating.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.